I stayed sober and stay sober by using the literature, whether it was the big book, Came to Believe, a pamphlet. I was unreliable for myself. So if I thought something and I felt something intensely, I was sure I was going to go drink because that's what I always did. So I'd open up Came to Believe, or I'd open up, I'm anxious. Let me open up As Bill Sees It. What's it say about anxiety? I was a student. I studied that first 164 pages until it was a working part of who I am.
I heard it through the grapevine. Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour featuring the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Don, an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
And I'm Alice, an alcoholic in Oakland, California.
Oakland?
Yes. I settled back into Oakland. I came back to Oakland, which is where I got sober, and I spent the majority of my life. I think I was here for 34 years. I'm in good recovery here.
Did you have difficulty getting the nerve to go to your first meeting?
I got tricked into my first meeting, so I didn't have to get up the nerve to go. Life wasn't swinging my way, right? Because nobody gets to Alcoholics Anonymous on the wings of victory. And so I go to a therapist because, in California, I'm from New York, born and raised. That's what we do. We go see a therapist.
Yeah, well, I went to a therapist too in North Carolina. So, hey, we got them here.
I was like, oh my God, these are all the sad things that happened to me, right? Because, I got here and like many of us, I was a victim. Mm-hmm. And she was like, there's an Al-Anon meeting and an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in walking distance from here. And before next week, when you come back, I would like you to try them both. And so I went to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting to see what was wrong with you guys. Wasn't hard at all. I was accustomed to seeing what was wrong with other people.
Did it stick? Did you identify?
I went back to the therapist and I was like, oh my God, it felt like home. These are the people I grew up with. Like, it took me a while to understand that it was my drinking that made me feel at home.
Well, because that's, if you're an alcoholic, that's what we're talking about. And I sure was. I was nervous as could be to go to my first meeting. But
why did you go?
I knew two people that had gotten sober in AA, friends of mine. I reached out to them when I realized that I'm screwed. There's no way I'm ever going to control this drinking. Because I spent the last years of my drinking really clamping down on it, like the iron claw machine. Yeah. I've got to control this thing because I was determined not to be an alcoholic, and I was. I couldn't control it. And I gave up, and I called one of my friends. And so they introduced me to AA.
When you were doing all of that controlling, were you enjoying?
Oh, it was bottled hell.
You cannot control and enjoy. You got to pick one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's it. I could control it. And it was like, my wife said, I think you're an alcoholic. And I was going, that's ridiculous. She said, quit drinking for 2 weeks. Okay. No problem. And by day 3, I was walking around with steam coming out of my ears and just making her life miserable because I was so miserable. Yeah. So she married me anyway.
There are miracles in this world. There really are miracles, right? Yeah, here's the second question. Even though you knew that you couldn't control it and you were in trouble, why were you afraid to go to an AA meeting? You knew people, you knew there was a solution.
Well, I knew there was a solution, but I also knew that AA was about not drinking anymore.
Oh.
And they talked about one day at a time. You don't have to quit forever. You just quit today. I was going, okay, that's a nice little ninja mind trick.
It's a trick.
It's not true. I'm quitting for the rest of my life. You know that, and I know that. But in fact, I learned that really we do just not drink today.
Yeah.
It's when we think of it that long term that's so painful.
When I got here, the thing I was taught was you can drink tomorrow if you choose to drink tomorrow. Just don't drink today.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the next day came, it was like, don't drink today. You can drink tomorrow if you want to, but don't drink today. It sounds ridiculous, but kicking the can down the road helped me get enough clarity that I could see the truth of what I was hearing in meetings.
Yeah. But you know, that fear that you have before, I was talking with my son about how much anxiety can have if you're like, maybe I could just learn a little bit about if I'm an alcoholic, how can I do that? One way to do that is listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who listen to the podcast, and we've heard from them who used it as a way to just put their toe in the water and see, well, and then eventually go, well, maybe I should go to a meeting, or maybe I could go to a meeting. They're making it sound attractive. And my son said, oh, so the podcast is kind of like a gateway drug to AA.
Yeah. I mean, there's one way to think about it, right?
I guess.
For you, it was important to make the choice. And for me, it was important to feel like, oh, I was going on some exploration, right? It wasn't me. And I think it highlights the truth of the matter, which is there's no wrong way to do the right thing. Just come on in.
Just come on in.
Yeah. Okay. Don, who's our guest today?
Alice, today we welcome Lena from Sterling, Virginia. And we also have a bushel of listener feedback. But first, the news.
I love those personal sound effects from you, Don. Folks, the Grapevine is looking for stories, so listen up. Old timers, what was AA like when you came in? What has been your greatest challenge? What has been your greatest joy? But don't linger here. Hurry, write it and send it in this week. No, really, the deadline is July 15th, 2024. Do it today.
Or you can write about any of our upcoming topics: technology in AA, fun in sobriety, atheist, agnostic, LGBTQ plus stories. We also need individual tradition stories. Pick any one of these and write about your experience. You have more time with these. Visit aagrapevine.org to contribute.
Our 12 Steps is a brand new collection of stories from AA members about working the program's 12 Steps of Recovery. Each chapter illuminates a different step through the experiences of a wide variety of AA members. This volume features all new, up-to-date stories from the pages of Grapevine, the International Journal of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is great for sponsees and step meetings, and it's only $13.99 at aagrapevine.org/books.
I'm Lena. I'm an alcoholic. As you said, I live in Sterling, Virginia. My sobriety date is November 1st, 1988. My home group is this 9 a.m. at Club 12, Leesburg, Virginia. Start the week off right meeting, and we do that. My service position, which is new to the group, is I am the timer.
The timer?
The spiritual timekeeper.
How much time do we have?
3 minutes.
Okay. How large is that group?
It's big. It's one of the bigger ones here. We probably have 40 to 50 people there each Sunday morning. Yeah.
The timer is in order.
Mm-hmm.
So what was going on in 1988 with you that brought you to an AA meeting?
Oh my gosh.
You heard how we came to our first meetings.
Yeah, I didn't come here deliberately either. In fact, I was really probably the last one to know that I was an alcoholic. On my 21st birthday, it was finally legal for me to be drinking. I was working for the Air Force, so I stayed out all night and partied. It's the last time I ever drank tequila because I did not make it in the next day. And they charged me AWOL. So fast forward 5 months later, the time between that is really a blur. I don't remember a lot about it. I was a blackout drinker as well. I just wake up one day and suddenly I can't do it anymore. It's just like you said, when you said you were broke, Don, it's like something broke. And I said, I cannot keep living like this. I went on base to us. It was called Social Actions. And for me, the experience was like, it was against my will. Now, I walked myself in there. I opened my mouth. But as the things are coming out of my mouth and they're true about how much I'm drinking and partying and not coming to work, my internal dialogue's going, don't tell him that. Why are you telling him that? Are you crazy? But it was like, it just kept coming out. Yeah. So They worked with me and sent me to treatment. And they took me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Otherwise, I don't know that I had any intention to ever come to Alcoholics Anonymous, to be honest.
What I've thought of as you were sharing that, Lena, is the feeling that I had. There is something inside of me like a beast. And when I quit drinking after about 2 weeks, it was like, I've got to drink. I was talking with my sponsor about it. He was going, yeah, it's rattling its cage.
Yep.
So what I learned was I've got to apply the program of AA to that thing, that alcoholism, because it is like something other in us.
My friend Ralph calls it the gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
Says that you're not done till the gorilla's done.
Yeah.
It's
And the gorilla's not happy about you quitting.
No. How was that first meeting, Lena? Do you remember?
I remember everything about it.
Wow.
The log cabin pitched roof. I remember I was wearing a red sweatshirt and somebody must have said their name and they were an alcoholic. When I said my name and I said I was an alcoholic, everybody clapped for me and my face was as red as my sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was mortified by the attention. I don't remember what people said, but I remember, oh, this is what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm an alcoholic. I was so happy to find out what it really was. They were happy. They were laughing. They were recovering. So then the next thing for me was, I fit somewhere. This is where I fit. This is where I should actually be.
Yeah.
Wow. What else did you discover inside of you that was part of alcoholism that you had no idea before?
It's alcoholism, but not just drinking.
Well, what was happening before I got sober didn't seem crazy until I got sober. It seemed completely rational and normal and the thing to do.
For example?
Well, just all the thinking. If I wasn't drinking while I was at work, I was thinking about where I was going to drink when I got out of work, who I was going to go party with, what were we going to go to. And if there wasn't going to be alcohol involved, I didn't go.
Right.
When I looked back, I always had something in me. I always wanted something in me.
Yeah.
And when there wasn't anything, to your point, Dawn, it was just excruciating. Anything I needed to do to get whatever was next, I would do.
What was it like being a newcomer in 1988?
Then the way you got to Alcoholics Anonymous was the yellow pages.
That's true.
There was nothing online. You called the central office and they would tell you where a meeting was. There would be a paper copy of all the meetings in the area.
List.
And then they would send that around and women would put their phone numbers on it. I went to a speaker meeting. That's where I found my first sponsor. I was probably somewhere around 45 days or so, shortly after I got out of treatment, heard a speaker. My first sponsor was a man. Mm-hmm. He was an old man. He was 8 years sober, had a wet spot on his brain, wasn't even supposed to be alive anymore. And he was miraculous to me. And he spoke out of the big book. Mm-hmm. And I wanted that. So I asked him if we took the steps.
Yeah.
Good. What did you do with this incredible feeling of wanting to drink and not, because you're totally surrendered, you're going to AA?
Well, when I first started coming, meetings in Sacramento are an hour and a half long. So I would go from 12 to 1:30. Mm-hmm. And then I would get off work, I would eat, and I would go to my first meeting at 6. It would go till 7:30. The next meeting would be at 8. It would go till 9:30. And then I'd go home and go to bed. Or, we went out for coffee. Had such a huge young person's group of friends. We hung out, we camped, we talked about God. We talked about the book. We, just did things together. So what I had to do to stay sober was not be by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Or I'd go to Alano clubs and just hang out there because I knew there'd be other alcoholics. I knew I wouldn't drink.
What's an Alano Club?
AA club, where there's meetings
And because a club is outside of AA, you can't call it AA, so they use terms like Alano.
So you can go even if there's not a meeting happening. There are people there playing cards, drinking bad
all the time,
all day long.
Yep. Just wait, waiting for a newcomer to come in.
Waiting for a new person.
Yep. I mean, I did it for at least the first 9 months. And for many, many years, did 7 to 10 meetings. I was 21. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. All I had to do was go to work.
Yep.
So that was a real blessing.
I want to just take a moment in reverence to the hilarity of 5 months of legal drinking and you were whooped.
I know.
When did you start drinking?
I had my first drink when I was 5. At a parental party.
Yep.
Can I have a drink? And yes, you can.
Yeah.
I was smoking cigarettes by 9 and
Yep.
by 14 doing something every day at school. So
Yep. That's my story, Lena. So even though you only had been legally drinking for 5 months.
Yeah, I didn't miss any drinks. I'll tell you that. Not one.
So the answer was going to meetings for you.
Yeah, it was a safe place. Even today, I think a lot about the way I think. My imagination was fired. I could listen to other people. The miracle of being sober was spoken. I went to meetings. I got a sponsor. I took the steps right away. Was done with my 4th step by 6 months, was, completing all my amends by 9 months. I did a lot of work. I did what they said to do.
You're 36 years sober, right?
Yeah.
Could you shed light on doing the work early?
The way I think about it is just the way it's described in the book, the foundation. My sponsor and I, we started at the blank page. And then we went to the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. We went line by line, the forwards, all of them. But it got into me in a way that for good and all, to my innermost self, I'm an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I was building the foundation for which my house could be built. So my house can crash and fall, but if my foundation is solid, which I got, I've never changed my mind about being an alcoholic and being able to drink. Done a lot of dumb stuff in 35 years, but not that.
Yeah.
So the benefit was, that's solid. I don't have any illusions or romantic ideas about drinking.
That foundation that you're talking about is how, in long-term recovery, we ultimately get to the place where sometimes we find we can have serenity in calamity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What about the present, Lena? How are you staying sober today?
I have a pretty strong meditation practice every morning, pretty religiously every morning, 20 minutes at a time. I would probably characterize myself of agnostic temperament. My ideas in relationship with spirit, higher power, whatever it's called, have opened and closed and blossomed and been cut off. And I'm at a stage in my sobriety where I've got kind of a non-attributional God is the way that I'll say it.
Okay.
And for some people that wouldn't work. It would be very scary for them. But standing on my foundation, having admitted powerlessness, knowing I was crazy, turning that over, getting right with myself, getting right with others, and then sharing that. I mean, you think at 36 years sober, that's a popular idea to have. It's not necessarily. But I also think that people need to hear that because people will come in and they won't have a big, strong spiritual relationship to quote, God, higher power, whatever that is. And I want those people to know they can still stay sober.
Thank you for sharing that because I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about Alcoholics Anonymous out. Some people think, oh, it's a Christian program. It is not.
No.
People think it's a religious program. It is not.
No.
People think, oh, you have to believe in God. No,
Yeah.
you don't.
You
No,
don't.
no, you don't.
Yeah.
And saying for someone with 3.5+ decades hey, I don't have a God that has attribute, but I believe in a way that I can't maybe even articulate, says to the new person, just come on in.
Yeah.
I think AA is just asking us to find a power greater than ourselves.
Yes.
For some people, it's very spiritual. For some people, it's very religious. And for some people, it's non-theistic. It's something else.
So I have spiritual practices. I think there's lots of ways to get to spirit. Your children, nature, the miracles that I've experienced make it undeniable that there's something greater than myself, because those miracles I didn't cause. I didn't relieve myself of the obsession to drink and use. That was removed from me.
Going back to the very inception of Alcoholics Anonymous, this has been the truth. Some people were deeply religious, and some people were like, whatever happens, do not write the word God in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
And I think that the spiritual principles are broad enough that you are free to choose.
Yeah.
The important thing for me to learn is I'm not God.
Exactly.
And I didn't understand. I thought I was God.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, shoot.
It's like realizing I'm relying on my own thinking, which is limited. And I'm living my life with faith in that. Yeah, sweetie, you think you're God. Stop it. And that's, I think, one of the really important things here. Not can I define it or does it fit somebody else's idea?
And the big book says all you have to do is willing to believe. And if, to crack that door open. And if you don't have that willingness, to pray for it. So in working with, not that first sponsor I talked to you about, but another one, in my work with her, I developed the assertion that, I don't have to formally go to spirit or higher power. Like if I think it and I'm having the conversation, that's a prayer. It's no more complicated than that.
No more complicated than that. This idea that it's got to be some certain way. I got to read 5 books. Right. I got to be on my knee. I got to burn incense. I got to have an altar. No.
Right.
It's different for everyone. Whatever path works for you.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that we surrender inside. And I'm a seeker.
Yeah.
I'm willing and I allow that God exists is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what it is, but I'll allow it.
That's what I mean by non-attributional. I'm very hesitant these days to go, oh, God did this or God did that, because for me, it's like, well, where does that stop? What I can rationalize and justify anything and turn it into anything I want. So I just don't. I just don't do it.
Lena, I appreciate that because I love you saying, look, I'm in a relationship. I'm on my knees in my heart. I'm surrendered to this power. And I don't have to attribute anything to it.
If there is this God, right? Well, how would this God want me to live? And then I live like that. If I holler at my kid, I go back and I apologize for it. I try to be kind. I try to be generous. I just do what I think this God would have me do. And it works.
Lena, this has been a great conversation. We've got another segment that we call A Newcomer Asks.
We received this email from Rebellion Dogs. Do you know where that comes from, Don?
Rebellion Dogs are every step at first.
Yes.
It comes from the 12 by 12.
Yes. It's in step 7, I believe.
It's from Jen R. in Chicago.
Thank you, Alice, Don, Sam, for having me as your guest on the podcast. It was a hoot. Ode to ye old boiled owl coffee club pod. I mean, I'm interrupting the letter. Shout out for the boiled owl. That's Sam and my previous podcast before we developed this one for the Grapevine. And you can still find it out there on the internet. She continues, fun fact concerning your new segment, A Newcomer Asks. It's also a pamphlet, as you have rightly borrowed the title. The second most popular pamphlet, year in and year out, wasn't composed by AA World Services, USA, Canada. In 1980, the General Service Conference adopted the Great Britain leaflet, A Newcomer Asks. No substantial changes were made in 1980, British English was changed to American English, and contact information and cosmetic changes were made. The pamphlet is now available worldwide in French and Spanish, as well as English. The USA-Canada General Service Conference has only ever adopted one other pamphlet, which is to say, not written it themselves. It's also from Great Britain in 2018. It's called The God Word, Agnostics and Atheists in AA. As for your requests for questions from newcomers, I've been talking with one lately. I would say her main concern is that if she calls a woman from our Zoom meeting, they'll think she wants them to be her sponsor. Mind you, I highly recommend getting a sponsor, but I prefer that she keep coming back to meetings and explore AA rather than worry about getting a sponsor. So, in the form of a question, it's probably, when should you get a sponsor? Which I've simply answered by telling her my experience. My first sponsor was sitting beside me at my first meeting. I asked, she said yes. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I really appreciate that. I am one of the odd old timers. Well, politically, we're supposed to call ourselves long timers now, right? I've waited a long time to be an old timer. I really love online Alcoholics Anonymous, although I love in-person meetings because I've been traveling so much. I really like online. And this comes up a lot. New people come in, we welcome them, we scare them probably in the same way that we scared the newcomers that came into the rooms. When should you get a sponsor? I think a sponsor is a spiritual guide. And I think as soon as possible, Lena did a beautiful job of explaining that it gives you the opportunity to lay a solid foundation in your recovery. So I think sooner as opposed to later, but we don't want to scare people off. We want people to know that they're welcome, whether they have a sponsor or not.
I think a sponsor at the very beginning was what I used to understand what in the world was going on in AA. Because where do you ask, what are all these types of meetings? So, am I welcome at that meeting? Should I not go to that meeting? And I went to a discussion meeting frequently, and my sponsor was there. He would lean over and say, "That's not AA." Because you hear all kinds of things in a discussion meeting. You hear all kinds of things in any meeting. Another thing that he told me was, some are sicker than others. And some people are not well and they're in the meeting. Take what they're saying with a grain of salt because they're still inside of their alcoholism and it needs to be cleaned up by working all the steps. So my sponsor was my guide through it all, and then ultimately my guide through the steps. When should you get a sponsor? I think you ought to get a sponsor as soon as you think that you're an alcoholic and you want to get help.
For sponsorship, I think as soon as possible is my answer. But I think the other thing that people really worry about is they think they're getting into this long-term commit, like a marriage, right? Like, if I ask them, I can't get out of it. No, get one as soon as possible. Right. And if it stops working, let them know and go ask someone else. If you got a good sponsor, they should have no problem with you moving on to develop your own sobriety. And if they have a problem, then you did the right thing anyway.
Run.
Exactly.
I've told sponsees, we can start working together. And if this ever doesn't work for you, quit. Get another sponsor because I want you to stay sober. And if this is not working, it won't hurt my feelings. This is about you. And I have a sponsor. So if it does hurt my feelings, I'll talk to my sponsor.
Exactly.
Where do you think the fear of asking someone to be your sponsor comes from?
What if they say no? No, I'm too busy or I don't want it. Then that experience is somehow personalized. They don't like me. There's something wrong with me. No, they're just not the one. There's lots of people. Go ask someone else.
And they might tell me what to do.
Oh, that's a good one too.
That's a reason to be afraid, right? I might get good orderly direction, right? I would say get a sponsor as soon as possible and find someone that is going to start with that first blank page because that's what I know. Nothing. Mm-hmm. And they're going to take me through the work that leads me to be recovered, not
Yeah.
recovering forever, but recovered. And that's even controversial to say. But I think that the scary part is not only the rejection, not only does somebody telling me what to do, but in some ways, picking a sponsor means I've committed to change my life.
Now you're
That's
in.
the scary part.
Now you're in.
Now I'm in.
Yeah.
And if I'm not committed to changing my life, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
Lena, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure to be with both of you. I love, 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 love sharing about Alcoholics Anonymous.
Thanks, Lena.
The Grapevine and Lavinia apps are now available for both iOS and Android phones.
To get yours, go to the App Store on your phone and search for AA Grapevine or Lavinia.
It's time for listener feedback.
Hey folks, we want to hear your comments. Call 212-870-3418 or write us at podcast@aagrapevine.org. Hey, we got some listener feedback here, Donnie Waddy Ding Dong.
Woohoo!
Or Ollie Wally Wally.
Woo-hoo! We love listener feedback.
We received an email from Jen R. Hello, Grapevine podcast folks. I just bought a Carry the Message subscription. It feels so good to know someone else will receive the Grapevine. I have many friends in AA who have been incarcerated, and having the Grapevine available will be great. I've been a Grapevine rep for a meeting, and I've even had an essay published in the magazine. I am loving the podcast. I've been traveling lately and helping my elderly parents. These events have made me even more grateful for an extra dose of experience, strength, and hope. The hosts make me smile. My favorite episode was when y'all were teasing each other about the editing process. Keep the joy coming. I'm so grateful. Jen R. in Chicagoland.
Ah, Jen, you made me smile.
Yeah, what a great reminder that what we do, even though it's just the three of us, really matters. Like we are available to people anywhere under any circumstance.
It's like having a meeting in your pocket.
And we love Grapevine reps.
And we love making fun of Don about the editing process.
It's true. But we love Don because Don makes us sound so good.
He does.
As does Bob. Don.
Thanks, Jen.
Hi there, Sam, Don, and Alice. This is Tracy D. from Buffalo, New York, Area 50, District 11. I just wanted to say that I am officially over 18 months sober, and I love you guys, and thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to listen and serve and be a part of, this big, wide fellowship. And thank you guys for being on my journey. And yeah, I love you guys, and I'll continue to give you calls and update you. Bye.
Woohoo! That's awesome, Tracy.
How amazing. 18 months is a miracle.
Keep it up and keep us informed.
Hi guys, it's Jerry C. calling from Kelowna, British Columbia. Still loving the podcast. You guys are doing such great work. I'm just listening to episode 20 on Hot Topic Sex. And when the phrase 13th stepping was brought up, it brought back a memory from recent experience out here. At an assembly, we were talking about something that obviously brought us into this issue about safety, and a long-time, well-respected, trusted servant stepped up to the microphone and offered the thought that if we're going to try to address this issue seriously and effectively, maybe we should stop giving it a cute name. And it really hit me because we use that term 13th stepping all the time, and half of the time we kind of half smile and roll our eyes. Yeah, there we go again. And it really hit home when he suggested that we either stop using it, or when we do say 13th stepping, we immediately qualify it or explain, certainly to somebody who's never heard the phrase before, that this is actually serious stuff and nothing to make light of. That's a little bit of a down message, but I've contributed some jokes over the time, so I thought maybe this would be a nice balance. Thanks for what you do, guys.
Not a down message at all. I really appreciate that, Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry, that one really got me.
I think the words we use are important. And, I use 13 stepping, and it's the term that was given to me when I got here. And I've never really questioned it. And I always appreciate a provocation. It is far too serious a thing for us to have a cutesy name. And what do we call it? And how do we explain it to people? I really appreciate him saying, wait a minute, are we taking this safety issue seriously?
Yeah, I think that this is an opportunity for a bigger conversation to start happening with folks about using this term.
Yeah.
Maybe it is time to retire it, or as he said, qualify it when you say it, but qualifying it when you say it is a tough thing. I think maybe it's time for us to call it what it is. And that's the question. What do you call it?
Yeah.
It's predatory behavior is what it is.
It's
Yes.
predatory behavior. You can be addicted to a substance or a process. And I think a lot of people come in and they stop drinking and then they start using other things outside themselves. And, that's why the boy meets girl is not always a good story in Alcoholics Anonymous. People who are new and coming in are influenced by older members, not age-wise, but duration of recovery. And that's how I think of 13 stepping. A person with more time takes advantage of somebody with less time. And men do it and women do it in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Well, that's the way I understand it. And I've heard it put that you are robbing someone's chance of getting sober. They don't have the opportunity to connect to a higher power, to connect to the group, to connect to AA.
And there was a good discussion amongst Scott and Debbie in episode 20 that Jerry's referring to. Folks, if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that episode. It's really good. I think that the big point here is not us trying to define what 13th stepping is, but folks in general having these conversations about what is 13th stepping and is there a better way for us to speak about it that's not cute.
I absolutely agree. And I'd even push it a little bit further, Sam, and say that it's not just about what we call it, it's about how we deal with it.
Yeah.
How do we have a conversation about safety in Alcoholics Anonymous? Sometimes the person that's approaching you that looks like the hand of AA is not the hand of AA.
Yes. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Hi, my name is Heather C. from Conway, Arkansas. I have called before because I just love the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour. I am recently re-listening to all of the podcasts. The episode I was listening to this morning was Willingness Grew on Me from Season 5, Episode 17. You guys were talking about slogans and the think, think, think one in particular. They told me that was, if you think of a drink, think it through, and then think again. And then you guys were also talking about relapse being a part of recovery. And it's like Sam, it's a part of my recovery story. My husband, he's another member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He says it can't be a moral failing when other people have it and a disease when I have it. The disease exacts a higher price from some people than others. And of course, some people pay the ultimate price. And I'm just truly, truly grateful that I made it back and have a design for living that I can follow today. Thank you so much again for keeping me sane and sober and being a tool in my toolbox. Love you guys. Take good care.
What a sweet message. What a lovely message. Not only listening, but re-listening. Relapse, for some people, they don't make it back. I go to a lot of meetings and there are people in their back and they call themselves retreads. And what we don't see is the people who don't make it back. And so I really appreciate her saying some people pay the ultimate price.
Yeah, some people do. And thanks for calling in, Heather, again. That episode Heather's referring to was where I learned a lesson about absolutes, where I made the statement that relapse is part of recovery. Everyone has relapsed, some before they came to the rooms and some after. And what I learned is not to make absolute statements about that because it's not the truth for everyone. However, as Heather noted, relapse is part of my recovery. I'm grateful that I did not have to go all the way back out and hurt like I did when I first came into these rooms.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
I'm at the very wit's end. Cuckoo.
Why do you never see people who've made all of their amends order lobster in restaurants?
Because they have lost interest in shellfish things. It's really not that funny. Thanks for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for AA as a whole. We share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. Podcast info, including how to call in, is at aagrapevine.org/podcast. Search AA Grapevine in the App Store on your phone or find AA Grapevine on Instagram and YouTube. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org. If you want to know more about AA, search online for Alcoholics Anonymous in your city or visit aa.org.
That was freaking amazing.